Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the somewhat controversial issue of genetic programming. There are certain critters and creatures that can sort of break out of the confines of genetic programming, and others that just seem completely unable to do it. And the same applies to some sort of human species as well. So this is what I want to talk about. And again, on the human side of it, at least it's quite controversial. Just to sort of set the ball rolling, that when the first contact with when the European traders started developing long ocean-going vessels, but even before that, but particularly that, they were coming in contact with peoples, whether they be in the Caribbean and North America and so on, and many hunter-gatherer societies. And what they found was in the hunter-gatherer, which was pretty much all of Africa, most of North America, and Australia, places like that. When they came across the hunter-gatherer societies, they found that these people seemed to be, no matter what you showed them in terms of technology or Western technology at the time, that these Stone Age peoples just couldn't seem to organize and couldn't seem to understand or grasp or maintain the technology. You'd give them like a knife made of iron, and they couldn't even conceive how iron and so on could be made. But as soon as it'd be blunt, they just throw it away. They wouldn't bother trying to sharpen it or maintain it or keep it in good order. That doesn't work anymore. So, and this was something that drove a lot of them to despair at the time. And the missionaries were made copious notes on this and commented on it through the 1500s and into the early 1600s and so on and beyond. Even the people traveling around the Pacific Islands, even in the later 1800s, were still marveling at how the natives, even though they'd been exposed for quite some time to Western technology and organizational and management and this, or those sorts of things, they still couldn't get it together, and they were bemused and to some degree frustrated by it. But the comment came back that these people are sort of genetically programmed and they just cannot break out of their genetic programming. Now, we see this today again all over Africa. As soon as, even though they've been exposed to white people and colonial stuff for hundreds of years, as soon as they get a bit more food on the table, they instantly procreate. And so then they put themselves back into famine almost straight away because there's not enough food to pay for, not enough food rather to feed everyone. So children are starving and people are dying like flies. And so, but they don't see it that way. Their programming just says do this. Now the same can be for people in say places like India and Pakistan, where they say there's a fixed pot of money in the world. The only way you can get more money is to take it from someone else and to take it through deception and fraud. This is quite acceptable. Now, even Indians who, again, that have been exposed for hundreds of years now to white man's, technology and industry and innovation and this sort of thing, still today think that way. That they have no concept of wealth creation in Western terms, which seems staggering to me, given how long they've been exposed to it and how some of them have even gone and got an education in the West. Still, they have that attitude. So why is it that Western, not every single one, by the way, there's always going to be exceptions. Why is it that Western people uniquely have these views about wealth creation and organization and technology and innovation that is uniquely Western? It hardly happens anywhere outside the West. I mean, you could point to little pockets of it, like, say, Japan, for example. Some say, well, look at the Arabs, they built the pyramids. Well, yeah, okay. But that wasn't the Arabs of today. It was a very different sort of people back then. So, that doesn't fly. And the more, the later ages, they were heavily mixed in with Greek and that sort of stuff. Nonetheless, let's have a look at this now. Just a couple of doors. We live on a sort of a side, hill and a forest. So the backyard backs onto forest. So I get to see lots and lots of critters. And then if I often sit outside and do some work on the computer if it's a nice day, and so I get to observe the critters there. But just over recently, there's a guy a couple of doors down's got a cat, and the cat seems to enjoy killing all the wildlife he can get hold of. And I've had a word to him a few times about it, and he sort of gets a bit unpleasant. He doesn't see there's a problem with the cat killing the local critters, but I do. But anyway, so I'm looking at the cat, and that's a couple of doors down. So I've got to look across two fences, but given the grade, I can see, and it's particularly steep grade in his backyard. And so the cat's there, and it's got a bird in front of it, and there's nothing stopping the bird from flying away. It's not injured, but the bird for some reason flies, realizing it's cornered. So the bird's sort of aware of what's going on, and I can see across the fence tops here. And and the bird continually flies towards in order to escape. So the bird's maybe 30 foot, 30 centimeters in front of the cat, and then it flies at quite a sharp upward angle. It flies towards the cat. Now, because it's got quite an angle going up, it's sort of moving maybe not that quickly. So the cat swats it down with its paw. The bird lands back on the ground and does the same thing again. So this went on for, I don't know, for forever. Now, the bird, given the steep grade, the bird could have gone to the side. It could have gone off down the grade. It had like a million different options of escape, but it kept on doing the same thing. Kept on getting swatted down and kept doing the same thing. Now, because of it was almost a 70-degree angle it was flying at, clearly wanting to get away from the cat, but it's flying straight into the cat's face almost to get away. Now you look at, so I did doing a research. This is a species that's been around for a gazillion years. It's not a sophisticated species, and it's totally sort of tied to its genetic programming. Its programming says, well, you go up as high as you can, and with a high enough angle, and that's it. And you keep whatever's trying to get you keep it in sight. So that's now this is hardly a sophisticated way, but the bird can't adapt to its situation. It keeps on doing the same things and flying straight into the face of the cat, the thing that's trying to kill it. Now, this is not a very sensible way of going about things. But let's take now a more advanced species that's, that species is millions and millions of years old, that species of bird, but is one of far more recent species. And you can see the difference in the behaviors. If a cat corners this other more advanced species, it will quickly fly off in a suitable direction. It'll duck in one direction to wrong foot the cat, then fly off in the other. It's skilled at getting away. The cat would struggle to contain a bird like that and have fun with it. So and watching that more advanced species of bird, the way they organise when they find food, how they quickly separate, like there's half a dozen of them would arrive. They'll quickly look at the food and say, okay, we'll all have a little bit. They're swift, efficient, organised, and they're far more numerous now than any other birds around here, even though there are species that used to be exclusively tied to the rainforests, further north in Australia. So you can see different species, and you can see the ability to transcend just the programming. You can see that there are species out there that will evaluate the situation and say, okay, well, I can, these are my options. I can do this. All right, we need to arrange ourselves in this way. Not that they don't, bicker and so on, but compared to the other species, if you like, in their wider category, you can see the ones that are well ahead of the others. They're better organized, they're more efficient, and again, they can transcend this genetic programming. Now, some are so tied to their genetic program, it's almost maddening to watch them, fuck about so much. When I can look at what's obvious. Why don't you do this? So, for example, there's a species of bird. If you put seeds out for them to eat, they'll bicker amongst themselves, and they'll come into the middle of the pile of seeds and flap their wings and scatter it everywhere, so that none of them get anything to eat. But they've got an attitude. A number of, especially the the species that are less sophisticated, they take the view that if they can prevent the other bird from getting something to eat, that's an accomplishment, without thinking about, well, how am I going to get something to eat? What do I want to eat that? But they think preventing the other one is an accomplishment. Whereas the more advanced species will say, well, let's get rid of the competition, let's crowd out the others, and then let's just divide up amongst ourselves so we all get something. And that's the idea of a species that's better organized and more advanced. Coming back to the human, and this goes for animals as well, by the way, you can see the more advanced, insects too even, you can see the more advanced species are just able to transcend that genetic programming. But if I look at the descriptions of Africans, say from, or in the Aborigines in Australia from the 16 and 1700s, I look at how their behaviour is described based on the observation of people who've got no axe to grind one way or another. And you look at that behaviour today and you see almost no difference. Why is it you can be exposed to in a very advanced society like white society, compared to the Stone Age people that they were? How can you be exposed for that long, for multiple generations? Remember, we're talking 10 plus generations in a lot of cases, well over that. You're exposed to white man's technology, very advanced technology. You're exposed to white man's education. You're exposed to everything about what white men do, how they do it, and so on. And yet still you're tied to genetic programming, behaving just the way that the first people first Western people observed you, how they described your behavior. How is that possible? Why is it that white people were able to comprehensively transcend their basic genetic programming, and yet other species of human were not? And why is it those species that were Stone Age 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago, why are they still very, not all of them, again, there are exceptions, why are they all, many of them, behaving the same way that they did 500 years ago when you've been exposed to a totally different environment for that length of time? It doesn't make any sense, but it does if you look at it in terms of the genetic program. Just what role does genetic programming play? Well, why is it that if you look at the inner city of Chicago or Baltimore, people that have been in the United States for again 10 generations plus, why are they behaving the same way as they do in Africa, in the most basket case dirt poor, crime-ridden place in Africa, which is like a third world failed state? Why do the people in Baltimore and Chicago, the black people, why are they behaving in that same way? Is it the inability to transcend genetic programming? I don't know. I'm putting the question out there, but I would argue it's a possibility. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.